I have no intention of dealing with your parents. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce.
That's how my husband threatened me. Are you sure about that? I had reached my limit and decided to go through with the divorce he suggested. A few days later, my ex-husband came to me, crying and begging on his knees.
I was wrong. Please, forgive me.
My name is Sally, a 27-year-old office worker. I had been married to David for a year. We met back in college. I was a freshman then, excited about the new campus life. At a club recruitment event, David approached me. He was 2 years older than me and was in the tennis club. I wasn't very athletic, but he explained that he joined as a beginner and was having fun. And the club had a system where everyone practiced and played matches at their own level. My friend was also interested, so we both decided to join the tennis club. I was nervous until the actual practice started, but he remembered me and taught me kindly. The experienced players would practice with each other, and the club had a great atmosphere where no one was left out. The seniors were always eager to teach the beginners, and everyone was so nice, which made the drinking parties fun too. During my enjoyable college life, he confessed to me around the time he graduated.
I've always liked you. I'm going to be working soon, and we won't be able to see each other. I wanted to tell you my feelings before it's too late. Will you go out with me?
I had actually liked him too, but thought he saw me just as a junior and had given up on the idea. So, when he confessed, I was thrilled. Of course, I said yes, and we started dating. Since I was still a student and he was working, we mostly met on weekends. But we had a great time. He was mature, leading the way and taking me to various date spots. He often paid for our dates, saying I was still a student, which I thought was very manly. When I was job hunting, he gave me advice, which really helped me prepare. Later, I graduated and got a job.
Congratulations, Sally.
Thank you. It's all thanks to you, David.
No, it's because you worked hard.
Then he suggested,
Now that we're both working, how about we live together?
You mean move in together?
Yeah. I thought it was better for you to focus on studies while in school.
That might be a good idea. I was happy he suggested moving in together. We decided to inform our parents about it. Thank you for thinking to meet my parents.
It's fine. It would be shocking if your parents just popped in and found out we were living together. Plus, it doesn't leave a good impression if I don't meet them first.
Oh, David. I was glad he was so responsible, valuing our relationship and considering others. We went to my parents' house, and we told them about our intention to live together. However, my parents were against the idea. Why? What's the reason? I didn't understand at the time. For them, it was too soon.
You haven't even lived alone yet. And you're about to start working, which means you don't know the hardships of being an employee. Starting to live together without fully establishing independence isn't good. First, get used to the job. Then, experience living alone. Only after you can live by yourself should you consider living with a partner. That's the right order, in my opinion.
But both of us were shocked at their opposition. We were even looking at apartments together.
Can't you really make an exception? I'm sorry. It's not that we don't trust you. It's just our opinion as parents, a rule and mindset of our household. I don't plan to bend it. So, if you want to live together, please, wait a bit longer.
Mom and Dad, you're being too rigid. There are so many couples younger than me who are living together.
And what if you end up getting pregnant? It's dangerous to act without considering the risks, getting carried away by the fun parts. We want you to have a solid foundation to handle any situation. You might be angry with us now, but please, understand.
He wouldn't budge. So David and I had no choice but to give up on moving in together. I had to apologize and send him home. I apologized again via text, and he seemed pretty shocked. I was very upset with my parents. Why did they oppose it so much? I'm 22 years old. I can be independent. But my parents wouldn't listen to my words. They dismissed me like a child, throwing a tantrum. There's a big difference between saying you can be independent and actually being independent. Once you start working, you'll see things differently. You're still young. Don't rush. Take it step by step. I felt so rebellious against my parents, who wouldn't understand my feelings. But as soon as I started working, I began to see that my parents were right. I realized how tough it was to live as an adult. Just going to work every day and slowly learning a massive amount of work was mentally exhausting. I felt even living alone would be challenging in such a state. There's no way I could have managed cooking dinner or cleaning. If David and I had moved in together, we probably would have fought endlessly. That's when I understood what my parents meant. It was ridiculous for me, who wasn't even prepared to be independent, to suddenly think about moving in together. Being at home, supported by my parents while focusing on work, was what I needed most at the moment. I dedicated myself to my job, wanting to gain the confidence to live on my own and prove it to my parents. Slowly, I became accustomed to work and started to see what it meant to live as a working adult, a corporate employee. After working for over half a year and saving up enough money, I was ready for living alone. On weekends, I learned cooking for my mom and made lunch boxes on days I could. Seeing this, my parents must have felt I was ready. They finally agreed to me living alone. So I started living alone in an apartment near my company. I managed to cook every day, and even with some overtime, I could still focus on my work. Before I knew it, I was the top performer among my peers and got an early raise. This boosted my confidence. Unlike my student days, I naturally developed a more mature way of thinking, and I could feel the change of myself, even when I was with David. We continued dating smoothly, visiting each other's places while living separately. He would often ask,
"Isn't it about time we started living together?"
But I felt it wasn't time yet. I think I need to experience living alone a bit more. I want to make sure I can manage life on my own, even when work gets busier.
I see.
He replied, somewhat reluctantly, but eventually agreed. After living alone for 2 years, managing my work and household chores even during busy periods, and saving money responsibly, I felt confident that I could handle whatever came my way. So I told David that I was ready to move in together. He was happy and immediately suggested moving in. We visited my parents again to inform them, and this time they recognized my independence and appreciated that David had patiently waited. They easily gave their blessings for us to live together. Next, we talked with David's parents, who were kind and said,
"If that's what you both want, we have no objections."
With their approval, we finally got the green light to live together. We excitedly searched for an apartment and signed a lease for a place that fit all our criteria. Choosing the kitchenware, furniture, and appliances together was a lot of fun. My income had increased significantly, and I had much more peace of mind than when I first started working. I'm glad we decided to move in together at this time. And so we started living together, finally realizing our long-awaited dream. No more saying goodbye after dates. Without feeling that slight sadness anymore, living together was so enjoyable. We spent time waiting for each other at home, going out to cafes or driving on weekends. We spent such happy times together. But even then, I noticed some small things. Living together brought up small differences in values and perceptions, things he or I might want the other to stop or that bothered us a bit. When these moments came up, I always tried to point them out carefully and gently. If we had moved in together before becoming working adults, I probably wouldn't have been able to handle these situations as well, and the worst case scenario might have been a breakup. I truly felt it was the right time to start living together. About a year after we started cohabiting, he proposed to me.
"We've been together for about 7 years, and I want to be with you forever. That will never change. Will you marry me?"
I felt the same and immediately accepted. "Yes, I will." That's how we decided to get married. Since we had already introduced each other to our parents during our cohabitation, both sets of parents readily accepted our decision to remarry. We smoothly arranged a meeting between our families and had our wedding. Everything from our engagement to the wedding seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. Many people attended and celebrated our union, making me incredibly happy. After the honeymoon, we returned to our apartment to start our married life. I thought we would continue our peaceful and happy days, but after getting married, something about my husband started to bother me. It was around Christmas when I first noticed it. My dad suggested that we come over for a Christmas dinner. "What do you think?" I asked him, but he visibly grimaced.
"Why do I have to go to your family's place? I want to go to my own home for Christmas."
"But you haven't been to my family's home since we got married." "I went to my parents alone for Thanksgiving. After getting married, it's important to visit each other's families." When I rebuked him, he replied reluctantly,
"Honestly, I'm not fond of your parents."
Why?"
"They're just too rigid. Remember when we first talked about moving in together? They were all uptight."
"Uptight? My dad was just giving us good advice."
"They're old-fashioned and inflexible. That's why I'd rather not be involved with them."
"What?" I was shocked by his words. I had rebelled against my parents back then, but now I was grateful for their strictness. Maybe he found my parents difficult because his own were more permissive. I think it was a matter of compatibility. But there was no need for him to slander them like that. From then on, I started to distrust my husband. I had always thought he was kind and sincere, but maybe he had another side to him. I began to sense a certain duplicity in him. After that, he never came to my parents' house and didn't make any effort to meet them. He would get really upset if my parents wanted to visit and would go to his own family's home instead. I was shocked by his attitude and felt guilty that I couldn't tell my parents the truth about his feelings. Gradually, my affection for him faded. He would force me to attend his family gatherings but refused to meet mine. His selfish behavior, based solely on his likes and dislikes, disappointed me. Recently, he started to openly denigrate my parents, triggered by my earlier promotion than him.
Why the hell did someone born to parents like that become a manager before me? Is the company messed up? Or did your parents pull some strings? Like, please promote our child or something?
Of course they didn't do that. Why would you say something so awful? He was clearly berating me and my parents out of jealousy. I was so fed up with him. He seemed to be showing his true colors more and more. In the midst of this, my parents invited us to a family gathering, mentioning that my uncle, who had always been kind to me since I was little, would be there. He was a busy businessman and rarely attended these gatherings, so I rarely saw him. I wanted to go, especially because my uncle would be there. My parents had asked me to bring my husband to greet my uncle, so I tried talking to him about it. Hey, there's a family gathering at my parents' house in a couple of weeks. My uncle wants to meet you too.
Nope, pass.
What?
I told you I don't want anything to do with your parents. If you don't like it, let's divorce.
He threatened. I can't believe this. Why would you say that?
Because you don't listen.
Enough! I ended the conversation quickly and decided to go to the family gathering alone. I was happy to see my uncle after so long, but I had been not talking to David since our last fight, and the stress made it hard for me to smile. My uncle noticed and asked if something was wrong, and I ended up crying. This surprised not only him but also the other relatives.
What's wrong, Sally? Are you okay?
My parents also sensed something was amiss and rushed over. I apologized and honestly shared about my troubled relationship with my husband and how he had been insulting me and my parents. The relatives were furious, and my uncle was angry too. Then, to my surprise, he suggested we go and talk to David right then. But
it's okay. I just want to have a proper talk.
He assured me, so I took him back to our house. David was lounging on the sofa.
Oh, you're back already? And who's this?
He asked, casually, scratching his belly.
You must be Sally's husband. I'm her uncle. Uncle? So you're her parents' sibling, huh?
My husband responded disdainfully.
Is that any way to speak?
My uncle said in a low voice, clearly annoyed by my husband's attitude. My husband didn't back down, though he seemed a bit taken aback.
Why should I care? She's my wife, after all. What are you doing here anyway? Isn't it rude to just show up unannounced? So you were just relaxing at home while there was a family gathering at your wife's parents' house. That's a terrible thing for a husband to do. What's with you? You're just like her dad, always preaching. Weird old man.
He then sneered. I was furious at his mockery. Stop it! Don't insult my family like that.
Oh? It's their fault for being ridiculous. Remember what I said? If you don't follow my rules, we'll divorce. Since you clearly don't get it, here's something for you. He handed me filled out divorce papers.
Are you really okay with this? I was at my breaking point. I decided to go through with the divorce. You better not regret this.
Who would regret it? You have a lot to reconsider about yourself, my uncle said, visibly exasperated and no longer angry. I packed my things with my uncle and took them back to my parents' house. Then I submitted the divorce papers and finalized my divorce from David. He was truly the worst. Why hadn't I seen how petty he was? I apologized to my parents and uncle numerous times, although they comforted me, saying it wasn't my fault. I felt responsible for marrying such a man. But it wasn't over yet. I knew a fact about him, which is why I decided to take action against him. A few days later, my ex-husband came to my parents' house crying and begging for forgiveness. I was wrong. Please, forgive me.
He said this because of what my uncle had done. The company my uncle managed was actually a major client of David's company. I only found this out when I told my uncle about my ex. My uncle had decided to assess David in person before making a decision about the contract. Finding him utterly despicable, he quickly decided to terminate the contract. Naturally, this caused significant problems for my husband's company. The president immediately asked my uncle why, and he honestly spoke about David's character, saying he didn't want to continue a contract with a company employing someone with such poor character. Consequently, the president fired David. In a panic, he came to me begging for forgiveness.
I was wrong. I should have valued not only you but your family too. Please, let's get back together.
What? Are you serious? You're just trying to save yourself. It's so obvious. I don't have a shred of love left for you. We're already divorced and we're strangers now. Leave before I call the police, I said coldly and closed the door in his pale face. I thought if he was still there in 5 minutes, I'd call the police, but he soon trudged away. After that, my ex-husband couldn't return to his company and struggled to find a new job. Apparently, he had been deemed incompetent at his previous company, and his reputation for causing problems made it impossible for him to find work. Now he's living in a miserable and lonely life in a cheap apartment, working part-time. All my college friends supported me, so he was ostracized by them too. Even his parents were dismayed and cut ties with him. Well, he's still young and can start over, but I hope this experience has made him realize how awful his behavior and attitude were. Meanwhile, I'm doing well in my job, finding work more and more enjoyable. My uncle, parents, and I had dinner together, enjoying our time as a happy family. Going forward, I plan to cherish my family while enriching my work and personal life.
You guys made the decision to remodel the house on your own, so why do I have to pay for it? My mother-in-law makes an unreasonable remark. Surprisingly, my husband sides with her.
Right, just as you say.
What? I'm stunned by his unexpected reply. What are you thinking, honey? I'm Kylie, a 35-year-old busy nurse. My job is quite demanding, but I find it challenging and satisfying. I've been lucky to have someone who has been my main pillar of support, my husband Martin. We went to the same high school and started going out during university. So we have been together for over 15 years, even though we've only been married for about 2 years. Being together for so long, we've grown to understand each other quite well and accept each other's flaws. Sharing a life with him brings a sense of security and peace, and spending time with him is invaluable to me. Despite the happiness in our lives, there is someone who troubles us. My mother-in-law, Julie. She clearly disliked me from the first time we met. Are you the same girlfriend who's been with Martin since college? Never thought you'd keep it up for so long. No more goals would give up and step aside, don't you think? You should have let him go. I couldn't understand what she was saying at first. According to her, Martin proposed to me out of pity. She claimed he was reluctantly tying the knot because it would be awkward to break up after such a long relationship. I was shocked to hear such a thing from someone I met for the first time. Martin was furious at her and lectured her along with his father down.
Mom, what the heck are you saying? Do you really think I'd marry out of pity? I genuinely love her and want to spend the rest of my life with her. He's right. He's sincere and has his own principles. What you said was disrespectful to Kylie.
Scolded by them, she rolled her eyes and looked indifferent. I don't see the point of defending her. So the first meeting ended up being a disaster. When we had dinner with both sets of family, she kept making snide remarks about me and my parents, only to be scolded by her husband and son. Since I had already informed my parents about her, they weren't too surprised, but they were still amazed at the extent of her behavior. Despite all this, we managed to have a beautiful wedding and have been living happily. The only thing is that whenever we visit my in-laws, Julie continues to bully me. Are you still working, Kylie? Yes. Being a wife usually means keeping the house and taking care of your husband, you know. And yet, why are you so selfish? I feel sorry for Martin. He's too kind to ask you to be a housewife. I'm troubled by her unfounded fantasies. Martin and I have been good communication, and when it comes to work, we've agreed to do our best in our own ways. Since he lived alone for a long time, he's able to handle household chores. I have irregular work hours like night shifts, so we lead independent lives. We find time to have meals together and enjoy relaxing moments when our schedules align. That's how we have found the best way for us to be a couple and live happily.
Mom, are you telling her something unnecessary again? Don't tell me you were picking on her.
I didn't say anything really. I just gave her a little lecture.
What do you mean, a lecture? You said something nasty, didn't you?
Oh, please. Anyway, did you get what I was telling you, Kylie? You better follow what I say. She blubbers random things as she walks away. When Martin and Dan are not around, she starts insulting me immediately. It's really amazing how she never gets tired of it. She's had this attitude toward me since we got married. So honestly, I don't like her. I thought she would eventually get tired of bullying me, but she has kept it up without fail. Even when scolded by Dan and Martin, she doesn't care. I think she could use that strength for something better. Unlike her, Dan is incredibly pleasant to be with. We go out to eat with him sometimes. He tells Julie he's meeting his friends and secretly comes out with us. If she finds out that she has been left out, she would definitely be furious. Well, ideally we would love to go as a family of four, but with her attacking me non-stop, it's impossible. Besides, both Martin and Dan find it more relaxing without her selfish and overbearing presence. So it's better for the three of us to have a peaceful meal. Everything other than her had been going well in our lives, and she was the only troublesome presence. However, just recently, an unexpected event occurred. Dan suddenly fell seriously ill and passed away. Both Martin and I were quite shaken by the sudden news. When we rushed to the hospital, his cold and lifeless body was lying there.
Dad.
Martin crumbled to his knees at the sight of him. While comforting Martin, I couldn't stop my tears either. To make things easier for him, I took the lead in arranging and preparing for the funeral. He managed the role of the chief mourner, while Julie did absolutely nothing. Moreover, she didn't even seem terribly saddened by the death of her husband. Despite spending most of their lives together and being supported by him for so many years, I wondered why she was so indifferent. Regardless of her questionable demeanor, we were able to have a heartfelt gathering where his memories were cherished. Many people came to bid farewell to Dan, who was well liked in the community. He must have been touched too. Well, it was a bit unfortunate that the love of his life seems to be unemotional. After the funeral, we tried to go back to our normal routine. At first, it was difficult to pretend everything was okay, but eventually, I started to become more positive about life. Amidst all that, Julie showed up at our house unannounced. That had never happened once since we got married, so we were a little freaked out.
What's up, Mom? Couldn't you give us a heads up before coming?
I won't stay long. We reluctantly let her into the house.
So what's the deal?
Martin asked as I served drinks at the dining table. Then, she made a surprising statement.
I want you guys to move in with me. What?
We were totally taken aback.
What did you just say?
Martin asked hastily.
I'm telling you to move in with me. Why do you have to be so condescending? And why all of a sudden? Well, I'm kind of lonely after your dad passed away, and it's inconvenient in many ways. There's no one to do the heavy lifting, and living alone in a big house makes cleaning a pain. If something happens to me, there's no one to help either. In case of illness or break-in, there's no one to rely on. Well, it might be true, but can we regularly visit you instead?
We have irregular work hours, so living together might disrupt your routine and cause trouble for you.
Are you saying you don't want to live together? It's not like that, but being told suddenly is inconvenient, you know. We're currently in a rented apartment, and moving to your place would be too far from work.
We desperately tried to convince her. As Martin said, being told to move in with her all of a sudden was troublesome. Honestly, her selfishness gave me headaches. No matter what we said, she insisted on staying until we agreed with her. I'm struggling and asking for help, so why won't you help me? Don't you have a heart? She started yelling at us. She had no idea that the more she got upset, the more we became distant. Having said that, we also knew if we continued to resist her, it would become even more troublesome. So we reluctantly agreed with her. She chirped,
"Oh, finally! It took too long!"
and walked out of our apartment satisfied. Just from that hour-long discussion with her, both of us were totally drained. Thinking about having to live with her was quite depressing. But once we'd accepted, there was nothing we could do about it. Even if we had refused her, we were sure she would have caused trouble one way or another. We tried to think that it was better to be close by and deal with her immediately. After that, we discussed various aspects of living together until we found a solution. We came to the conclusion of living in a duplex house. When I mentioned the dilemma to my parents, they suggested taking over their house. They were considering moving to the countryside for retirement and had been contemplating whether to renovate the house or rent it out. Since they said it would have been most appreciated if I inherited it, we decided to move into their house. Considering we'd probably have a hard time living with Julie in a single-family house, we thought about remodeling it into a duplex. Also, as I mentioned to her before, my work hours were irregular, so I was concerned about inconveniencing her with late night or early morning comings and goings and daily noises. So splitting the house into two separate residences seemed like the best idea. We explained all this to her at one point.
Are you okay with our plan?
Martin explained in detail, but she wasn't really listening.
Yeah, that's fine. So we can live in a proper house, right? Of course. We'll remodel it. Then there's no problem.
I got really worried if it was genuinely okay, but since she said it was fine, I had let it go. Then we proceeded with the construction. After a few months, the house was complete and we moved in. We were very impressed by the aesthetic. Even from the outside, it looked so clean and new, like it was just built from scratch.
It's amazing, isn't it?
The remodeling was definitely a good idea. We were just in awe of our new residence. Suddenly, we were pulled back to reality by Julie's scream. What the heck is this? Why is it a duplex house? We turned around to look at her, perplexed. She was glaring at us with a terrifying expression. I never agreed to this. The entrances are even separated, so it's not living together. We sighed at her angry complaints.
Mom, I checked with you a few times, right? I explained in detail, and now you're complaining? I told you it would be a separate living because our lives are irregular and might cause inconvenience otherwise, right?
Well, you might have said something like that, but I don't approve.
You did say it was fine. I've confirmed it with you multiple times. This is non-negotiable. Take it or leave it.
Faced with Martin's firm stance, she couldn't retort and mumbled something. It seemed like she wasn't entirely convinced, but she reluctantly agreed and went inside her own house. We breathed a sigh of relief. It was really frustrating not knowing when she would explode. It was a good thing we went for a duplex. Even so, she continued to be a bother though. The doorbell rang repeatedly. It was undoubtedly her. What's up, Julie? I came to eat dinner. Huh? I forgot to go to the supermarket. It's still 7, so it's still open, you know. Come on, if I go now and make dinner, it will be pretty late, right? I thought having yours would be better than nothing. Why did she have to say it like that? What are you having? Beef stew, but that sounds perfect. I will help you finish it rather than let it go to waste. She forced herself into the house. Then she plopped down on the sofa without hesitation and changed the TV channel on her own. I'm starving, so get it ready soon. Martin won't be home until 8, so I will be waiting until then. No way! I can't wait that long. Just prepare it for me first. She got upset like a child. I reluctantly prepared the stew for her and set it on the table. She sat down and ate it while keeping her eyes on TV. As expected, there were no words of gratitude from her. She finished it in no time and then sat back on the sofa to watch TV. I sighed as I cleared her dishes. She was like an ill-mannered child. When Martin came back, he was surprised to find her in our living room. He was exasperated when I explained the situation. From then on, she ate dinner at our house almost every night. She practically treated our place as her own, and we started getting irritated with her attitude. What's more, she made us do everything while not lifting her finger herself. Not only house chores, but she didn't contribute a penny to that remodeling cost, even though we discussed splitting. Also, she ate at our house every day, but she didn't pitch in for groceries. When we finally asked her to contribute at least for her own food, she came up with nonsensical excuses, saying she was just letting us treat her and showed no intention of paying. While we were earning decently, with the remodeling cost and the daily growing food expenses, our expenditures had become quite high. So we had to confront her once again.
Mom, it's time to pay up.
What do I have to pay for?
It was a promise, right? We agreed to split the remodeling cost. It's been a few months since we moved in, but you haven't paid a dime.
When Martin pressed her, she got defensive. You guys made the decision on your own, right? So why do I need to pay? I didn't agree to a duplex house to begin with. She made unreasonable claims. Then, to my surprise, he sided with her.
Yeah, you're right.
What? I was stunned by his unexpected reply.
Sorry, Mom.
When he apologized, she put a smug look on her face. No worries, if you understand. Just be more careful from now on. I wasn't satisfied, but he grabbed my hand, and we left her house. Hey, What are you thinking? Back at our place, I questioned him.
What if we sell this house?
But if we do that, your mom won't have a place to live.
Don't worry about her anymore. If she wants to do whatever she wants, let her do it alone. Let's live just the two of us.
His idea shifted my thoughts in that direction. You were so right. We've been too accommodating to her for too long. I've had enough. We quickly prepared to move, starting with finding an apartment for the two of us. We didn't mind renting again, and it didn't have to be spacious. We compared our non-negotiable conditions and found a suitable property. We promptly signed a lease to be able to move in any time. We put the house on the market, packed our belongings, and were ready to go. Meanwhile, Julie had no clue what was going on. We kept it a secret until the last minute to trouble her. Soon after, the moving company arrived and started loading our belongings. Then, Julie rushed over in a panic. What in the world is going on? Are you guys moving?
Yeah, we are.
Then there's no point. What am I supposed to do alone?
You are still healthy. You can live alone. We are cutting ties with you, Mom.
What are you saying? You can't do such a thing.
Yeah, we can. And we won't be dealing with you anymore.
When he firmly stated, she got angry and defiant. What's wrong with you, you idiot? I will be fine without you guys anyway. I will live it up in this house. Then we dropped a bomb on her.
What are you talking about? We've already put this house on the market.
What?
The owner is moving, so it's obvious, isn't it?
Wait a minute, Martin. So I will have to leave too?
Yeah, but if you buy the house, you can stay. Right, honey?
Sure. Would you like to buy my house? What do you mean by your house? Looks like you haven't been listening at all. This house was originally my family house. I inherited it and remodeled it. Really? So I have the right to sell it. Of course, you will have to leave too. If you try to remain, I will have you arrested for trespassing. Oh no! She finally seemed to understand her situation. Wait, if you leave me behind, who will I rely on? Martin, are you abandoning your own mother?
You only bring out your family when it suits you, huh? I can't see myself caring about someone like that anymore. We're moving now. You should leave soon too.
Martin! She was left speechless, looking pale. We left the house without giving another glance at her. Later, she was forcibly kicked out of the house. We blocked her on our phones, so we never got any direct calls, but Martin received emails. She managed to find a cheap rundown apartment, but she claimed she was struggling and needed financial assistance. We had already covered her living expenses and remodeling the cost. We cut ties when we left, so we didn't need to be involved anymore. He deleted the emails and marked her address as spam. We heard from our relatives that she was accumulating debts and seeking financial help, but we told them not to engage and explained that we were no longer connected. She's shut out by everyone, and no one knows how she's doing now. We decided to forget about her and focus on our lives. We plan to prioritize each other and live happily from now on.
Oh, come on. You're always relying on Mom, aren't you? Why don't you at least do the housework by yourself?
Then my normally mild-mannered mother-in-law became furious with my husband.
You're in the way. Get out of my house right now.
My husband was kicked out by his mother, but then he did something unbelievable. My name is Madison, a 30-year-old office worker. My husband Kyle and I have been married for 2 years. We met through group dating, where he approached me and soon started dating. From the first time I met him, I had the impression that he was cool, funny, and handsome. He also worked for a large company, so to be honest, that was also a plus for me. I was happy that he approached me, and I was immediately attracted to him. He went on a few dates before making it official. We continued to date steadily, and a year after we started dating, we got married. I knew I could have a happy married life with him. We met each other's parents, had the wedding ceremony, and before I knew it, we were a married couple. Even so, the newlywed life was exciting, and every day was fresh and fun. My husband wanted me to stay at home, so I became a full-time housewife. I worked hard every day to take care of the housework. I carefully cleaned the house to make it comfortable, and I made sure to iron all the shirts my husband wore every day. I also put a lot of effort into cooking, making sure to make several types of dishes every day, and packed lunches for him too. My husband was very satisfied with my efforts, and praised me for it.
You work really hard to do the housework, and it really helps me out. Thanks for everything.
I was very happy just to hear my husband say that. After that, I continued to do my best. After all, when my husband praises me, I feel motivated. It makes me want to do more and more things for him. My husband took me to outings on his days off and took me to nice restaurants on our anniversaries. Because of these things, my newlywed life was extremely happy. I also had a good relationship with my in-laws. Every time I went to my in-laws' house, they were very nice to me.
Madison, we got some delicious snacks, so why don't you join us?
Oh, that sounds good.
Okay then, I'll get the coffee.
He's been into making hand-dripped coffee these days,
so we'll just have to let him do it. Oh, come on, don't say it like that. I'll make sure you get a nice cup of coffee.
My in-laws are a very close couple, and I've always looked up to them as husband and wife. Well, I guess my husband and I are similarly close and happily married. I was happy as a newlywed, and my relationship with my in-laws was good, and everything was going well. 2 years after our marriage, I became pregnant. I was overjoyed to have a child with my husband I loved so much. When the doctor told me I was pregnant, I immediately went and told my husband.
What? We're having a baby? Yay, I can't wait. Madison, I'm going to try my best to be a great father.
My husband was extremely happy when he heard the news. I'm glad he loves kids, and seeing him so happy made me happy too. We are going to have a warm and happy family, aren't we?
Yes, of course.
After that, I told my in-laws that I was pregnant, and they were very happy as well.
It's great to see the face of our grandchild so soon, isn't it? You'll have to buy all kinds of baby goodies, right, Madison? If there's anything we can do to help, don't hesitate to ask. You can count on us.
Yes, thank you very much. My parents live in a rural area in the countryside, so I can't just casually go home. So it's quite reassuring to have my in-laws living in the same area as us. Moreover, both of my in-laws are so kind to me, so I really appreciate it. I thought that I would be able to have a good relationship with my in-laws and enjoy my days with them after the birth of my child. However, after I became pregnant, my husband's true nature, which I did not know about, gradually became clear to me. That day, I was extremely ill due to morning sickness. I didn't have the energy to cook dinner. I had never had a day like this since we got married. I've never been sick because I'm genuinely immune and don't catch colds. But this pregnancy was beyond my imagination, and I got sicker than I expected. I was so sick that I did not feel like moving around and doing the housework. I messaged my husband around lunchtime. It was to say that I couldn't cook dinner, so I wanted him to buy some on the way home. I received a reply of concern and acknowledgement that he understood. That day was really bad, and I laid there all day. My husband looked at me and said,
"You look really sick."
as he worried about me. He told me to take it easy, and I was grateful for his words. I finally felt a little better after sleeping all day, but the smell of food was still too strong for me to make my husband's lunch. This has never happened to me before, and I felt so sorry. I needed to get better soon. I bought some fruit and other things to nourish myself for the time being. I tried to do as much light housework as I could without overdoing it, and just concentrated on resting my body. Finally, at night, I felt better and was able to cook dinner.
"Oh, dinner is ready. You must be feeling better."
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you so much.
"No, it's okay. Well, I don't want this to happen again and again, though."
What? My husband was munching on his dinner while saying that. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to go through morning sickness, and to be honest, I didn't know what to expect when he'd say something like that to me. I tried to stay in shape as much as possible. There are some things you can't control. About a month later, I got really sick again with morning sickness, so I couldn't cook for my husband like I always did. I sent a message to my husband asking him to prepare his meal by himself, as I had done last time. But he didn't reply. I had a bad feeling about this, but I was too sick to do anything about it, so I went back to sleep. When I woke up, it was after 8 p.m. I dragged myself out of bed and went to the living room. My husband was already home, drinking beer in front of the TV. "Hey, I didn't hear you come home. Sorry I couldn't make dinner today."
"Yeah, well, you'll have to do better tomorrow, won't you?"
My husband turned to me and said in a deep voice. Then he immediately turned to the TV. He seemed to be angry. That's when I remembered what he said the other day about how he didn't want this to happen again and again. But I didn't skip dinner because I didn't want to cook, and I wasn't sick on purpose. I wanted my husband to understand that. I wondered if he would start to give me the cold shoulder when I got sick again. I became even more anxious. And I was right. A week later, I got sick again. I was surprised at myself at how often I felt sick. I was hesitant to contact my husband, but I sent him a message asking him to prepare his meal again. My husband responded very coldly this time.
"That's enough. Don't take advantage of me like that. You're a housewife, so do your part."
These messages came one after another. Then my husband sent a message saying that if I didn't have any dinner ready, he would go out for a drink. And that was the end of the exchange. It's terrible that he goes out for a drink when his wife is feeling nauseous. I thought he was just angry and said such a thing, but he really went out for a drink and came back at 2 a.m. I was extremely anxious until he came home. I was afraid that my condition would get worse and collapse. And after that, he became very strict with me.
"You've been so lazy lately, haven't you? I can tell you've been slacking off on cleaning and cooking."
I'm sorry, but I'm not in the best of shape to do the housework, and this is all I can do.
"I told you to stop making excuses like that. Being a housewife is easy, isn't it? I've worked my butt off to provide living for the both of us. But to be treated with such shoddy housework makes me wish I could be you lying around at home."
How could he say such a thing? I was shocked. My husband doesn't help me with the housework at all, no matter how hard it is for me. And on the contrary, he abuses me with his words like that. I called my mother-in-law, desperate for help. When I told her that I was very sick from the pregnancy, she told me to go over to their house right away, and she even offered to drive over to pick me up if it was needed.
"Madison, are you okay? The sickness during pregnancy is hard for some people, so don't push yourself too hard."
When we arrived at my in-law's house, my mother-in-law told me to take it easy, and she prepared some food for me to eat that was good for my pregnant body.
"How about you just stay here for a while?"
What?
"Well, your parents' house is too far away and your brother and his wife lives with them, right?"
That's right. Indeed, my brother and his wife lives with my parents, and since they are quite far away, it was practically impossible for me to go back to my own parents' house. So I was very grateful to be allowed to spend time at my in-laws' house as if they were my own parents. But without me, there would be no one to do the housework. When I said that, my mother-in-law told me not to worry about it. He's a grown man, so he should be able to do that on his own. If it's okay with you, I'll call Kyle right away. I was a little torn, but decided to take my mother-in-law's word for it. Since my mother-in-law contacted Kyle, my husband couldn't complain to his mother and readily allowed me to stay there. I spent some time at my in-laws' house, and I really felt at home. My in-laws treated me as if I was their real daughter, and told me I didn't have to do any of the housework. This allowed me to rest my body and calm down mentally. About a month after I started living there, my husband suddenly came to the house. It was Sunday morning, and my in-laws had just driven to the supermarket in the next town over to do some shopping because they were having a special sale. I was in good health, so I stayed at home and waited for my in-laws. I was surprised when my husband came out of the blue. "Kyle, what's wrong?"
What's wrong? This is my parents' house. It's my business, whether I decide to come home or not. You're the stranger here.
He still talked to me coldly. I thought he might be a little nicer to me now that I've been away for a while, but his attitude hadn't changed since right before I left. He sat down on the sofa with a thud and let out a deep sigh.
Oh, my head hurts from the hangover.
My husband says this, though nobody asked.
I drank out last night, or rather until this morning.
His wife is going to have a baby soon, and he'd been drinking until the morning. I was listening to my husband, thinking to myself that he was really selfish. Then my husband looked at me. "What is it?" I asked, not knowing why he was looking at me. He sighed and told me to at least serve him tea. I was annoyed, but I wasn't feeling too bad today, so I offered him tea.
You've really become sloppy, haven't you?
He drank the tea while saying that. Then he laid down on the sofa and started watching TV. I wonder why he came over here. If he just wanted to relax, why didn't he stay back home? Apparently, the place where he had been drinking this morning was closer to his parents' house than to his own. That's why he came here. After relaxing on the sofa, he asked me to cook something for him. By that time, my bump was getting bigger and all my movements were as if in slow motion. I had no choice but to make breakfast for him, though. But he saw me moving so slowly and blurted out,
How slow can you move? I hope you haven't been skipping on housework the whole time you've been here.
Your mother is kind enough to tell me not to worry about housework, so she's been doing most of it. I answered honestly. Then my husband shrugged his shoulders and made fun of me.
Oh, come on. You're always relying on Mom, aren't you? Why don't you at least do the housework by yourself?
If I had to deal with a husband who blamed me like that, I would get sick again. So I told him I was sorry and that I would take care of it, and prepared his breakfast as told. Just then, my in-laws came home.
Oh, Kyle, you're home. I thought I'd come over to my parents for a bit. You're being too easy on Madison. She's forgotten how to cook and clean. If she comes home after having a baby, and she's still doing everything so slowly, it's just useless.
My husband badmouthed me like that, even in front of my in-laws. Then my mother-in-law, who was usually mild-mannered, became furious with my husband.
What a thing to say to your pregnant wife. She's going to have a baby soon and her bump is getting bigger, so it's no wonder she's moving slower. Shame on you for not knowing that and saying such a thing to her. What the hell? Why are you so angry? You're in the way and I want you out of my house right now.
My husband was surprised because my mother-in-law was fierce, and just like that my husband was kicked out by my mother-in-law. My in-laws apologized to me when they did nothing wrong. My husband had left and there was peace again. But then he did something unbelievable. It was when my mother-in-law went to check on him for me and picked up a few of my things on the way. My mother-in-law came home furious, and there was my husband next to her. What's going on?
Kyle brought home a woman.
Huh? I couldn't understand on the spot.
Oh, she was just, she is...
My husband was choking on his words as if he couldn't find a good excuse. I guess that answers that question. He was having an affair. Since when? How long have you been having an affair? I asked, surprisingly quietly.
Well, about 6 months ago.
That long? My husband had been having an affair since a little while after we found out I was pregnant. He said it was with a colleague from his company.
She told me I was so cool working so hard for my future baby, and then...
I didn't want to hear what happened after that. My mother-in-law slaps my husband.
You're such a scoundrel. You should be ashamed of yourself.
My husband looked smaller as my mother-in-law yelled at him. I lost all affection for him at once. I think we'll have to separate.
What?
I knew I couldn't trust you after what you've been doing and saying lately.
I can't imagine how hard it must be for you to be a single mother when you're going to have a child.
When my husband said that, my in-laws got angry again.
Who do you think is to blame for all this?
My husband shut his mouth at that.
Madison, you do what you want. I'm sorry our son did such a horrible thing.
My in-laws were totally on my side. Anyway, I needed to focus on the birth right now, so they say I can stay with them until the baby was born. And they cut off their son and didn't allow him to come back to their house. I safely gave birth a little while later. A healthy baby girl was born. My in-laws were very happy to see their grandchild. Of course, I didn't let my husband see her. After that, I divorced my husband and filed for alimony against him and the affair partner. And of course, I asked my husband for child support. For the time being, it allowed me to live on that while I looked for a job. I immediately went job hunting and luckily got hired. I kept my daughter at a daycare center and decided to live as a single mother from then on. I have kept in touch with my in-laws since then, and I visit them regularly for them to see their grandchild. I heard that my ex-husband tried to remarry his affair partner, but apparently she actually had a real boyfriend and dumped him without a second thought. However, my ex-husband got upset at that and told her boyfriend about the affair, and the boyfriend dumped her soon after. The affair partner and my ex-husband had a huge fight, which became a problem within the company. As a result, the affair partner resigned voluntarily, and my ex-husband was sent to a smaller branch in a rural town. When I hear things like that, I realize again how foolish it is to be naive and have an affair with a light heart. On the other hand, I am living with my daughter, and seeing her become capable of doing various things every day makes me very happy. I will continue to work hard for my daughter and enjoy watching her grow up. What a lousy husband to be so selfish while having an affair himself. It's a good thing that her in-laws were very kind. I'm sure Madison will be able to live independently, and I hope she continues to stay close with her daughter and make lots of happy memories with her. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel if you liked our story. See you in the next video.